Conversations, episode Adrian Peterson. First time listeners, welcome in. Long time listeners, welcome back. I am your host, Kay Bex, and whether you are a first timer or a long timer, happy to have you in, and hopefully you will join us moving forward as well. If you're new or just somebody who hasn't done so yet, please take a second to follow us on our socials accounts and interact with us in the ways that are possible. We're on all the major socials: Facebook, X at KBEX_ATC, Instagram at cornversationspod, and we are streaming on all of the major streaming services, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Special request if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, just the way that they do their rating systems and how they promote shows. A rating and a review on Apple Podcasts goes an especially long way. So if you are a listener on Apple Podcasts, it would be very much appreciated if you could leave us a good rating and a nice review on that platform. But all of them help, and getting the word out in any way possible is what will help this show grow to those who have not yet discovered it. We are amongst a very, very busy time in sports, and there are a lot of different topics to choose from. So it was pretty easy to cherry pick from what I wanted to talk about this week. I am flying solo, no guest here, but I don't think we're going to have any problem filling the airwaves given the number of things that are going on. I've talked about this in previous episodes that there are just a few times during the year where it feels like sports are maxing out their capacity in terms of giving us something to pay attention to. And this is definitely one of those times a year. You've got the NBA and NHL playoffs that are about to kick off. MLB is now in full swing. You've got the domestic soccer leagues basically globally, outside of the US, kind of wrapping up their campaigns for the season, and the MLS is now underway as well. And then if you're an auto racing fan, you've got that going on globally, a ton of different series that have started off their year, and we've got the NFL draft on the horizon here in just about a week. So a lot to choose from, a lot of different storylines, and like I said, I'm going to be cherry picking this week for the topics of this episode. And where I'll start is just some brief commentary on the NBA playoffs and maybe a challenge that I see with what they're doing from a broadcast perspective. We'll then move into some news that came out this week that has seemed a little frustrating on the surface related to the U.S. Soccer Federation. And then we will end with a personal favorite of mine, an announcement from the Washington Commanders about their new uniforms that they're going to roll out this coming season. And as part of that, we'll do an adjacent top 10 ranking to close out the show. So a lot in store for you guys. Hopefully you'll be along for the entire ride. So yeah, let's start with the NBA playoffs. So officially, they've already started. I'm recording this on a Friday evening, and we're just about a day away from the unofficial start to the NBA playoffs, which is the part that does not include the play-in tournament. But the play-in tournament is part of this conversation. I have a little bit of a concern with the way that the NBA has decided to do its broadcasting format for the playoffs. And this is not necessarily new for the NBA because the media rights deal that they signed in 2024 that has taken effect as of this season has obviously played out for the entirety of the regular season and actually had really good results. Just a couple of days ago, the NBA reported that it had its highest viewership for a regular season in 24 years. And compared to last season alone, is up 86% in total viewership for the regular season. And that comes amidst a lot of chatter from fans about some challenges with regards to viewership. And actually, that's one of the drawbacks or the knocks against the NBA right now is that they're having a hard time drawing eyeballs in. And what I think is one of the things that maybe is going to continue that conversation with regards to eyeballs is the NBA's decision to put a number of their playoff games on Amazon Video's network for viewership. Now, Amazon Video is not a bad platform by any means. I don't think that it necessarily is going to be a failure when it comes to sports broadcasting and streaming as a whole. But in terms of its brand equity so far, I just don't know if it's quite there yet for a league like the NBA, which has struggled with viewership ratings, to put their eggs into this basket. When I think of Prime Video and sports streaming, the first and pretty much only thing that comes to mind for me is the NFL's Thursday Night Football broadcast. Outside of that, they're really still kind of a fledgling network when it comes to sports streaming. And when it comes to the casual viewer of the NBA, and I think I'm uniquely qualified to talk about this because I would consider myself a casual viewer of the NBA. You have a challenge when it comes to asking that type of viewer to go and find the content that you're looking to broadcast to them. The truth is, a casual viewer is not going to spend a whole lot of time looking for the content that they're going to watch. So if you're trying to find an NBA game, and as an example, I was trying to do this week, trying to find one of the play-in games, I went to where I would normally go to when I'm trying to find a sporting event. So I'll use a aggregator like Sling TV. I'll obviously there's other options like YouTube TV as well, but basically I'm going to go to that service and I'm going to try to find the NBA game that I want to watch, assuming that it was there. Come to find out, even though Sling has a pretty good setup in terms of letting you know from a sports perspective what they're offering on their network, I was unable to find the game. Unbeknownst to me, that the entirety of the play-in tournament for the NBA is now broadcast on Prime Video. Additionally, about 30% of the first and second round games are also going to be broadcast through Prime Video. And in 6 of the 11 years of the contract that the NBA has signed with Prime Video, along with NBC, Peacock, ESPN, ABC, they're going to host at least one conference final series on Prime Video in about half of those years of that 11-year contract. So this is going to continue building. The NBA has a strategic plan, it seems, to bring Prime Video into the fold as one of their main providers of the content. And in fact, actually this season, Prime Video broadcasts the most number of regular season games. They aired 60 of them on Prime Video, and only 58 were broadcast on the next closest, which was NBC. So there's clearly a directive from the NBA to try to get this platform up and running and have fans associate pro basketball with the network. I just wonder whether or not it wouldn't have been a smarter decision for the NBA to kind of let the NFL sort of help Prime Video build its brand equity before they decided to put their eggs into this basket. Looking at tomorrow's schedule, Saturday's schedule, for example, 3 of the 4 games, playoff games for the NBA, are on Prime Video. So I can't imagine that the casual viewer is not going to run into the same issue that I ran into earlier this week trying to find one of the play-in games, where they are just unable to find these games. And unless they do the digging to find out that they are on Prime Video, they're not going to tune in. And when I consider the fact that I'm really talking about the casual viewer here, you're really competing for eyeballs for a fan that is going to basically go and watch what is most easily available to them. So if the casual viewer is okay with watching an NBA playoff game, or they're okay with watching an NHL playoff game, I think that the winner is going to be the NHL in this case, because they're broadcasting their games on NBC and ESPN exclusively. And so you're going to find a situation where these fans are just simply going to what they find first. And excuse me, it's not NBC anymore. It's Turner Sports Broadcasting. But still, I mean, they're on the aggregator as well. It's a situation where they're not having to go to another platform, another app entirely on their television in order to find these games. And that alone is one of the frustrations that many fans, even the hardcore fans of a particular sport, have complained about over the years, is that as we've started to detach a lot of these offerings from what used to be a big cable package, you now have 8 different services that you have to buy these games. And it's one thing to know where to find the games if you have the service. It's another thing in the case of the NBA, because I really just don't think there's a lot of fans that know this yet, to have games on a network where you wouldn't be able to find a game without searching a little bit deeper. So we'll see how it works out for the NBA. Obviously, they have reason to believe that it is a positive gamble because it worked out so well during the regular season. But I'm very curious to see what the numbers are going to look like for the playoffs, because now that you're competing with so many other things, including something potentially equally as interesting to a casual sports fan like the NHL playoffs, the competition certainly ramps up at this point. So, speaking of frustration, we'll then now pivot to the news that came out this week related to the U.S. Soccer Federation, which was the surprising departure of sporting director Matt Crocker after just 3 years on the job. And what's potentially most surprising about this news is that Crocker's departure comes less than 2 months out from the U.S. joint hosting the 2026 World Cup. Obviously, the optics of this are not good at all. There are already concerns from a number of fans about the U.S. going into this World Cup because of their recent results in friendlies, because of the uncertainty that has been generally seen from the coaching decisions from Mauricio Pochettino. And now you have this situation where the sporting director has decided to leave less than 100 days out from the biggest soccer sporting event that the country has hosted on its grounds in over 30 years. But we have to remember that optics do not equal impact. And in reality, what Matt Crocker's job was to set the stage for readiness with regards to the World Cup, specifically the U.S. men's national team's readiness for the World Cup, and to put the federation in a position for the future to be successful. In the end, his presence or lack thereof 2 months out from the World Cup and during the World Cup is frankly irrelevant to the results that we're going to see on the pitch this summer. So you could basically say, or if you wanted to argue this point, which I'm arguing, you could say that his job is essentially done. At this point, he would be sitting back in his position, monitoring what he has already built, and essentially at the end of the day, either taking the accolades for what he was able to do to set up success if the U.S. is to have success this World Cup, or watching as the talking heads and as potentially his bosses would start to come down on him for failure or lack of results. And that's not something that he can control. And it's also not something that he necessarily needs to be there for that to happen. So if there's success in the World Cup this year, some of that is going to be attributed to what Matt Crocker has done over the past 3 years. If there is not success, people are going to come and they're going to say that he was part of the failure, whether he's in the building or not. I think ultimately where a lot of the frustration comes from here is that it has been rumored, and I believe now actually within the last few days it's been confirmed that he has decided to take a job with the Saudi Arabian Federation in a similar capacity. So effectively, you could say that there is a likelihood that he decided to chase the bag and has gone from the U.S. to the Saudi Arabian Federation, likely for a bigger paycheck. Now, you have former U.S. men's national team legends like Alexi Lawless and Landon Donovan, who have been pretty critical of this decision. I think Landon Donovan essentially said, hey, if he doesn't want to be here, then good riddance. We don't want a guy like that that's not completely um, dedicated to the success of this federation. But that is, again, trying to tie the optics of this situation to the impact. In the end, he's already done everything that he could do to set this team up for success or potentially for failure in this World Cup. And what happens on the pitch in 2 months is really going to dictate whether or not he was successful. The other thing, and this is something that Tim Howard brought up, is that there's already been some success here. He joined the fold with the U.S. Federation in 2023. And one of the first things that he did as sporting director is he hired Emma Hayes, who is the manager of the U.S. women's national team. And she was brought in to clean up some of the mess that was part of the program after a very disappointing 2023 Women's World Cup. And what did Emma Hayes do? Well, in less than 12 months, she was able to turn things around, retool the roster, and came away from the 2024 Summer Olympics with a gold medal that not everybody was expecting, despite all of the success that the women's national team has had over the course of its history. So that is something that can be attributed to Matt Crocker. That is a hire that he brought in. Additionally, another thing that he has done, and we'll kind of see over the years how this will either help or hurt the federation as a whole, but his spearheading of the decision to bring all of the associated teams within the federation under a single roof with regards to training is something that is also going to be viewed as his decision, his baby, as part of the federation over the past 3 years. That's a roughly $228 million decision to bring everybody into Atlanta. Previously, all of the teams, and we're talking national teams down to the youth levels that are associated with the U.S. Federation, have basically been all over the country in terms of their training facilities. And now they're going to have some continuity and some consistency there, all being in the same city in Atlanta. So there's a couple of good things that Crocker has done. We don't know yet what the results are going to be, which are ultimately going to define his legacy as part of the U.S. Federation here. And lastly, when you consider that he isn't even American, he's actually Welsh, the comments that Donovan and Alexi Lawless made, which were kind of erring on the side of nationalism and, hey, you should be fully on board with everything that this program wants to accomplish. In the end, can you really blame him for chasing the bag? He's not American. So we'll see how things go during the World Cup this year. Surely this conversation will come up again, but I think potentially even more importantly than how the U.S. team does in the World Cup this year is how the development of the federation as a whole does, all under that one roof. I think that's potentially his unsung impact of the U.S. Federation moving forward. So lastly, we will talk about the Washington Commanders' decision to roll out new uniforms this year. And the way that the Commanders had framed this is that it is a return to the Super Bowl era. So if you've had a chance to take a look at the jerseys, you will notice that they are back to their regular or historic burgundy and gold colors, which is a slight variation from what they've done over the past few years as part of the rebranding to the Commanders. So it is a return to some days of success within the franchise's history, but potentially what got the biggest headlines, and it was leaked about a day before this actually was unveiled on Wednesday morning, was the reintroduction of a particular graphic within one of the alternate logos that tends to bring, it pays homage to the old name, the Redskins. So if you have not had a chance to take a look at this logo, the block W or the origami folded W that the Commanders now use with their alternate uniforms, which are a black alternate, it now features a distinct spear going through the middle of that origami W. So clearly a homage to the days of old when they were known as the Redskins, and going back to some of the days of alternate uniforms when they were the Redskins. The spear has actually made appearances in the past on the helmet. So this is uh, a clear reversion, I guess you could say, turn back the time to the days when they were known as the Redskins, which has irritated some people, but I think it's a generally speaking mixed bag with more positive than negative. I personally love it. I think it's great that they're returning to the spear. I think uh, it's a nice homage to what was previously, but also not overstepping the boundaries that have been created. They're never going back to the Redskins name. I think that we can pretty much put that one to bed, or at least reasonable people have put that one to bed. But bringing the spear back is a nice ode to the history that this uh, proud franchise as a whole has had. So I love it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments as to whether or not you think this is overstepping the boundaries for the Commanders, or if it even makes any sense. In the end, there is no true reference to or linkage to the Commanders in a spear, but it also very much feels like the Commanders can now enter the territory that a lot of teams have entered, which is really leaning into the throwback type uniforms that many teams have had a lot of success with over the years here. And that's where I'll pivot now, and we'll do a top 10 ranking list of my favorite throwback uniforms across the major US sports leagues. So essentially what this is a top 10 list that I've created of my favorites in terms of throwbacks. And to define what throwbacks means, it's something that whether they're using it now as their primary uniform or primary logo, or they're using it as an alternate, it is generally regarded as a throwback because it's something that the particular club or franchise has used in the past. So I took some liberties with this. Actually, one of the teams on my list uses this particular throwback as their primary logo now. But growing up for me, this was not seen as the primary logo. So I still consider it a throwback. But before we dive into the top 10 list, I do want to throw out several alternate honorable mentions that I came up with. Essentially, I just built a list here and kind of whittled it down to one. But the four that did not make the list that I did have on my original scratch list were the Philadelphia Phillies maroon and baby blues that were made popular in the 70s and 80s. I really love that color scheme, and I just think that it's a good look for them. The Memphis Grizzlies, I'll call them the Vancouvers. So the kind of cartoonized version of the Grizzly that used to be the center court logo and on the actual jerseys themselves that were primarily popular when the team was still located in Vancouver. I just think that's kind of a throwback to the 90s in general, when the NBA was kind of running the show when it came to having the best uniforms in pro sports. Another one that I have is an honorable mention. Can't really do a best throwback list without this one, but it didn't make my top 10. Is the Anaheim Ducks, Mighty Ducks uniforms. I just feel like that has so much cultural reference because of the movie that it's got to make this list. That being said, didn't make my top 10 list. So who knows whether that's me just having a bad opinion here, or if it's just a really tough list. And then lastly, the Denver Broncos orange and block D combination. I love this one as well. I've actually got another variation of orange and blue throwback on my top 10 list. So I think to an extent, I just really like this color. But when I think the orange and block Ds, I'm thinking John Elway, and I just feel like it pays homage to a successful time in Denver's history, and those colors just really pop. So, with that in mind, I'll start with number 10 here. I have the Atlanta Braves lowercase a throwbacks. So, in addition to going lowercase a with these throwbacks, um, they also changed up the color scheme slightly. So instead of a navy blue, they've got the baby blues, and then instead of the kind of dark red, it's kind of a lighter red, if you will. And I just think that's a solid combination. To me, that this uniform combination screams Hank Aaron era for the Braves. And to me, the lowercase a feels distinctly urban, which I just think fits Atlanta in general, which is kind of interesting because there has long been gripes with the Braves in general because of where they've put their stadium, on a side of Atlanta that is, generally speaking, more affluent than a lot of what you would see in the downtown area. But I think the lowercase a is as good of a visual representation that, yeah, when you're thinking Atlanta sports teams, you're thinking urban downtown, even though the Braves don't necessarily play there. Number 9 on my list, and I think not only are these throwbacks awesome, but the general primary logo and jersey combination or sweater combination is really cool as well. I've got the Colorado Avalanche with their Quebec Nordiques sweaters coming in at number 9. Um, I think it's really cool that they kept the color scheme for the most part when they moved to Colorado. And again, equally solid logo for their primary. But when they come out and they play in the Nordiques sweaters, I just feel like that takes it to another level. And it's kind of weird that, well, weird and cool at the same time, I think, that hockey does pay homage with its previous locations so obviously with regards to where they're playing now. So there's another team I have actually pretty high on this list that kind of has the same situation going on. But Quebec Nordiques sweaters for the Colorado Avalanche is my number 9. My number 8 here, and I should probably have mentioned at the beginning of this list, this is probably something that is best to listen to when you have the ability to look these up if you don't already know what I'm talking about. Hopefully, a lot of listeners do already know what I'm talking about, but if you don't, fire up Google and just start searching these things kind of like I'm describing them, and I imagine that you're probably going to be able to find them. So yeah, number 8, I have from the MLS, Sporting KC's throwbacks to their Kansas City Wiz days. And I actually saw this one in person. They were playing a game in Columbus a couple of years ago, and they pulled these ones out during a match. And I thought they were awesome. It's very rare, especially for the MLS, that I would think about buying another team's kit outside of the crew. But this one got me very close to that because it was a really, really uh, solid kit. I love the color scheme, the rainbow color scheme. I think a lot of teams do it well, but it being a throwback to what they had when they started and they were playing at Arrowhead Stadium, that's pretty cool in my opinion. So wanted to throw in something from the MLS. So I've got all 5 of the major sports leagues on this list. Number 7, I've got the Milwaukee Brewers, and what I'll call this one is a current revival of the MB Mitt logo. So, to qualify this one, growing up for me, the main logo for the Brewers was the big M with the little grain under it. And when they decided to switch to the MB Mitt logo at the end of the 2010s, I thought it was a great idea because in addition to being a big jersey guy, I'm also a huge hat guy. And the MB mitt was not only one of the first hats that I bought when I was trying to amass my collection of having a hat from every team in the major leagues, but it also stands still to this day as one of my favorites. Um, the reason I would still consider this to be a throwback to some extent is that the color scheme that they've kept with the current revival of this logo is in line with what the Brewers were doing when they still had that big M logo. The lighter blue and the lighter gold is what I would consider to be the true throwback here. But the logo alone is enough for me to consider this as part of the list. And again, the MB logo, one of the best in all of sports, bar none. So kudos to Milwaukee for making the decision to bring that in as their primary logo. Number 6, this one is probably going to hit close to home for some of the listeners. I know we've got some Cleveland fans that are regular listeners of the show. I love the Cleveland Cavaliers blue and orange throwbacks. I know that they weren't able to get the job done and win the NBA title thanks to Michael Jordan for many of the years that they wore these, but it is a solid combination. The Cavs logo with the little bucket with the ball in it is just really a cool logo. I know they started to kind of bring that back as well in some variation, but the blue and orange is, I think, the Cavs' best color scheme that they've had as a franchise. And I kind of wish that they would do more throwback to this particular color scheme. So I mentioned it earlier when I talked about the Denver Broncos orange and block Ds. The orange and blue block Cavs logo is really a solid one, in my opinion. Staying with the orange theme at number 5, I've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers creamsicle jerseys. And I don't think I'm alone here. I think a lot of people really like this jersey. It pops. There aren't a lot of teams, especially at the professional levels, who are playing in orange, so it's somewhat unique. But what's interesting about these uniforms is that they have such a soft spot for both fans of the franchise itself as well as just fans of the NFL, even though, and this is particularly for fans of the franchise itself, the level of success was so low that they had when they originally debuted these uniforms. So when the Buccaneers came into the league, this is the uniform that they actually started with, and they were horrible as a franchise for a number of years. And so there's so much bad history, really, that is associated with these uniforms, yet they're so popular that I think the franchise really had no choice but to gradually bring them back into the fold. So as somebody who was not around when a lot of that lack of success was going on with these uniforms, I'm a big fan of them. Number 4, and now we're going to start a new trend here with a different color. I've got the Utah Jazz's purple uniforms. I love these as well. This is the mailman and John Stockton. I mean, that's what you think of with these uniforms. Just the background of the mountains with the Jazz logo and the purple is just such a solid combination. And I know they've really never let go of these. There's always been some variation of the uniform that has maintained its rotation, even as they've kind of shifted to more of the blue, white, and gold combination of colors. But this is an undefeated uniform combination for Utah, in my opinion. And kind of like with the NHL, where I talked about how the NHL does a nice job of kind of paying homage to what has been for certain franchises. I think the NBA has done a really neat job of doing the same with regards to the names. So obviously the Jazz started in New Orleans. They kept the name, but they incorporated uh, some of the visuals, I guess you could say, that would associate it more with where they're at now. So I mentioned we're now on a new trend. The trend is purple. At number three, I've got Arizona Diamondbacks purple and teal uniforms, and specifically, I love the all purple with the teal and gold A that they used to have on their hats. Um, Major League Baseball has in the past done something called the uh, Turn Back the Clock series, which was kind of a precursor to the City Connects that they're doing now with regards to jerseys. And one of the first Turn Back the Clocks that really caught my eye was when they decided to do the throwback to the all purples with Arizona, who has kind of over the years toyed around with a number of different color schemes with their uniforms. And I don't think any of them have really stuck in the minds of fans quite the way that the all purples have. Um, if they ever come out with a version of that hat for an on field that is readily available for sale, I need to go and get that one. I thought about it back in the day when they did the turn back the clock and they had it available, and I didn't pull the trigger. And honestly, that's one of my bigger regrets with my hat collections is that I don't have the all purple Arizona Diamondbacks hat. So coming in at number two, and at this point, there's probably a number of people listening who might even know what these are because these are really, really popular throwbacks, I think, with a lot of people. And this one's coming from the NFL, similar to some others on the list. This is taking from history of this franchise and applying it to its current situation, which happens to be in a different city. And I'm talking about the Tennessee Titans when they do their Houston Oilers throwbacks. So I love this one for a number of reasons. Number one, the color scheme is great. The baby blues and the red and the white, kind of similar to the lowercase a for Atlanta. I just think that's a really solid color scheme. But the other thing that I think is really cool about this is that um, the oil derrick that used to be the main logo the for the Tennessee franchise when they were down in Houston and were known as the Oilers is one of the coolest logos in sports. So I'm really glad that they have decided to maintain that to a degree and that they throw these things out there every once in a while. Even when they're not doing the oil derrick on the helmets, just having the color scheme is great. And it's so good that they've had people or other programs try to emulate this, and they've been given cease and desist letters. So a couple of years ago, University of Houston, the Cougars tried to come out with a uniform that basically copied the color scheme of the Oilers, and Tennessee came and said, "No, you can't do that. That's ours." So they understand how valuable this throwback is, and as much as it's disappointing that a team that's actually located in Houston can't have a little fun with it, this one still makes my list on a really high level. So, number one now is one that if I were collecting a lot of hockey sweaters, I would certainly have this one on my list. But I have a total of 0 hockey sweaters as part of my jersey collection, which maybe needs to change, but I don't have any. And so I don't have this personally in my closet. But this is my favorite throwback in all of U.S. pro sports. And that is when the Carolina Hurricanes pay homage to the Hartford Whalers and go with the Whalers color schematic and the Whalers logo on their chests. I've had some conversations with buddies in the past. Shout out Barely Hockey Podcast and Phil. And we are in agreement. This is the best logo in all of hockey. So it made sense that Carolina would retain this when they became the Hurricanes. Obviously, it has no real significance to the Carolina area, but the logo was just so good that they could not let go of it. And that is a smart decision on their part. Um, I don't think anybody would be super upset if they just decided to go with this schematic and logo for an entire season. So it's that good. And despite the fact that NHL is maybe a casual watch for me, they've still got a uniform combination that makes the top of the list for this one. So let me know in the comments what you guys thought of that list. I'd love to hear what your favorite throwback combination is as far as jerseys are concerned. I'm sure we could get real creative with that one. So send those in the comments. Again, if you'd like to interact with us in future episodes, we're always open to collabs and ideas of things to do, things that'll keep you guys coming back and listening and hopefully get our name out there to a broader audience as well. Again, we're on Facebook, X at KBEX_ATC, Instagram at cornversationspod. And if you'd like to send us a mailbag question or you just want to privately let us know how we're doing, cornversationspod@gmail.com is another way to get in touch with us. Thanks very much for listening. Hopefully, you guys are excited about all that is going on in the sports world, just like I am. And we will be covering some NFL draft coverage next week. So be on the lookout for our next episode as well. But until then, enjoy the action. And until next time, take it easy, Shuckers.